Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, a crowd tear gas in Chicago as tensions surrounding ICE escalate. A wild chase involving federal agents and a driver living in the U.S. illegally ends in a car crash on Chicago's east side. Residents surrounded those agents and were then tear gassed. We're on the ground with the details of these events. One day after the ceasefire, President Trump issuing a stark warning to Hamas.
And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
This as Israel accuses Hamas of violating the truce for only returning the remains of 4 of the 28 deceased hostages. Our Rachel Scott is at the White House Ian panel in Tel Aviv. As we enter week 3 of the government shutdown, President Trump announces a $20 billion bailout for Argentina. Critics slam the move to bail out another country while millions of federal workers go without pay. The U.S. Department of Labor says a potential food crisis could be stemming from immigration raids. In tonight's Prime Focus, Mireya Villarreal reports from a family farm in Idaho caught in the middle of this harvest season, hoping they have enough workers to get the job done. And he was one of the pioneers of neo-soul, D'Angelo losing a very private battle with pancreatic cancer. As the tributes pour in, we take a look at his legacy and the music he leaves behind.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
And good evening. It is good to see you. I'm Gio Benitez in for Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We're watching the fragile ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas already being put to the test. Residents in Gaza say that Hamas fighters are increasingly visible on the streets, looking to reassert themselves as Israel withdraws. And President Trump issued a warning to militants tonight. But first, to the violent standoff between residents in Chicago and Border Patrol agents, a crowd throwing eggs and other objects at agents who then deployed tear gas. You're seeing those images right there. It all started after a vehicle crash on Chicago's east side. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol agents were chasing a red SUV in circles when it rammed the federal agent's vehicle. DHS says that the occupants of the red SUV were undocumented immigrants who were later arrested. It's then that the tense confrontation with police began, the latest flashpoint in a nation divided over immigration, who can belong, who is removed, and how they are treated. The Department of Homeland Security says the incident is part of a growing trend of violence against agents. And for more on all of this, we turn now to Michelle Gallardo. She's a reporter at our Chicago station WLS. Michelle.
Gio, this was essentially a 2-hour standoff that just started getting progressively more tense. We were here for a good part of it and were able to witness how upset residents were at the presence of federal agents in the city, in the neighborhood. And as things began to escalate, some of those residents began throwing eggs and other objects at the agents that were assembled, probably about 50 in total. And of course, that is when agents began deploying tear gas on the residents, with Chicago police officers actually caught in the middle of that deployment as well. At that point, they had tried to come in to de-escalate this situation. But this all began as a result of a car crash that took place at the intersection where this all unfolded right around 10:30 this morning. Surveillance video that we've able to obtain of the crash leading up to it shows that there was a white expedition that was being driven by Border Patrol agents chasing a red SUV in circles around the neighborhood, probably for around 30 minutes. And after the accident, we see the occupants of the red vehicle running away, the agents chasing them. And a statement from the Department of Homeland Security, in fact, saying that the driver of the red vehicle rammed them first, saying that that is what prompted the chase. And they added that both of the people that were inside that vehicle were undocumented immigrants, and that it was after they were arrested that this confrontation, this standoff with the residents ensued. Now, several people were arrested in the aftermath of this, but Homeland Security not telling us how many people exactly were arrested or where they were taken. They did go on, however, to describe what happened as part of what they say is a growing trend of people resisting arrest and ramming their vehicles into the Border Patrol agents that are in Chicago during what is being termed Operation Midway Blitz, Gio.
And I know all of you at ABC7 WLS there in Chicago will be covering this. Michelle Gallardo, thank you so much. And just hours after hostages were returned home to Israel, the fragile ceasefire with Hamas, touted by President Trump on the world stage, is now being tested. Today, Hamas released the bodies of 4 more hostages who were killed in captivity. But Israel accuses Hamas of violating the truce by not releasing them all as promised. Here's ABC's chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell from Tel Aviv now.
Tonight, after his groundbreaking trip to the Middle East, President Trump with a warning to Hamas, saying they must disarm as part of the next phase of his peace plan.
If they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Israel tonight accusing Hamas of violating the ceasefire deal by not releasing the remains of more hostages, threatening to cut desperately needed aid into Gaza in retaliation. Late today, Hamas releasing 4 more, but 20 are still missing. Parents like U.S. citizen Ruby Khan waiting in agony for his son Itai.
The job is not done. There are no less hostages than the 20 that came out.
Stories of abuse and hardship now emerging from the released hostages. The family of Omri Moran telling Israeli media he counted every day he spent in captivity, at times even cooking for his captors. Omri reunited with his wife Lishai, playing with his 2 young daughters, Ronnie and Alma, just 4 and 2.
Finally, he could embrace Ronnie and Alma, he could play with them, he could feel like he's a father again.
In Gaza, some of the nearly 2,000 prisoners taken by Israel and held without charge also reporting abuse. Abdullah Fakran detained for 20 months, saying he was told his family had been killed. It was a lie. I was released, not knowing if my family was alive. It was a beautiful feeling to find them, he says.
And what a relief that he could find them. Ian Pannell joins us now. Ian, the president has been very clear about his expectations here that there will be peace in the Middle East. What does he expect from Hamas, though, in order to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, this 20-point peace plan certainly sets out a process whereby Hamas disarms, hands in its weapons to some kind of decommissioning body, and effectively signs itself out of existence and hands over power. Now, Hamas has already said that it will be ready to hand over power. It hasn't actually said publicly they'd be ready to disarm, and it's actually some of its security forces who are back out on the streets of Gaza. But again, President Trump seemed to acknowledge there would be this interim period after the Israeli troops pulled back where Hamas would have to run security until this international security force comes about. And in some senses, he was responding to a question, but there's so much that still needs to be done. And I think what's happened, this dispute about disarming with President Trump's comments and the return of the missing bodies of the hostages, those kinds of disputes, those arguments, just underscore how much remains to be done and how fragile this process is. But with President Trump's backing and commitment, which he seems absolutely adamant, as you say, there will be this wider Middle East peace. I think it will stay the course. It just won't be a very straight road. Expect bumps ahead. Gio?
Yeah, and the world is watching. Ian Pannell in Tel Aviv. Ian, incredible and important reporting over these 2 years from the region. Thank you so much. And back here in the U.S., it is day 14 of the government shutdown. While millions of government employees are going unpaid right now and others have been fired, President Trump announced a $20 billion bailout for Argentina. Democrats are blasting the move as misuse of U.S. taxpayer dollars. Here's our Rachel Scott following it from the White House.
Tonight, with the government shutdown stretching into day 14 and with millions of federal workers going unpaid, President Trump welcoming his political ally, Argentina's President Javier Milei, to the White House to announce a $20 billion bailout for his country.
Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. Very simple.
The economic lifeline comes just a month before Argentina's crucial midterm election. The president making it clear his support depends on the outcome.
If he wins, we're staying with him. And if he doesn't win, we're gone.
Democrats seizing on the move, accusing the president of using taxpayer dollars to help another country while the U.S. government is shut down.
The overwhelming majority of Americans say we need help with our health care, and they're busy spending $20 billion because Trump seems to really like the leader of Argentina.
Democrats say they won't agree to fund the government unless Republicans extend Obamacare subsidies, so insurance costs don't rise for millions. The White House already firing more than 4,000 federal workers, threatening to lay off even more and dismantle programs important to Democrats.
We're not closing up Republican programs because we think they work. So we are closing up Democrat programs that we disagree with, and they're never going to open again.
At Washington Reagan Airport today, air traffic controllers are sounding the alarm. Peter Lefevre has been an air traffic controller for nearly 16 years.
Not knowing exactly how I'm going to have childcare for my kids or put gas in the car or pay the next mortgage payment adds a certain level of stress onto an already stressful profession. It's just very difficult.
Yeah, so many people struggling. Rachel Scott joins us now from the White House. And Rachel, are there any efforts here to get paychecks to federal workers who are going without pay during the shutdown?
Yeah, well, Gio, we are learning tonight that the Department of Defense is now redirecting about $8 billion in funds to make sure that our military troops do not miss a paycheck tomorrow. But as for all the other federal civilian workers out there, including contractors, they are still going without pay while the government shutdown continues to drag on. And Gio, we have said this many times before, but lawmakers continue to collect their paychecks, even though the House is still out of town, Gio.
All right, Rachel Scott there at the White House. Thank you for your reporting. All right, let's stay on this topic now and get into the political news of the day with U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar representing the 5th District of Minnesota. Representative Omar, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Gio.
Absolutely. You know, let's start with Argentina here because it's rare for the U.S. to intervene in another country's currency market like President Trump has just done. Your reaction to this $20 billion bailout?
Oh, it is just really horrendous to have $20 billion from taxpayers going to Argentina when we know that Argentina right now has gotten rid of their export tax while we have tariffs and they're selling soybeans to China while soybean farmers in Minnesota and across the country are suffering.
And that's one of the things that a lot of people are talking about right now and thinking about, of course, the government shutdown that's underway right now. What support are you trying to offer federal employees who are furloughed or working without pay right now?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, federal employees are like many employees in the United States, where they are one paycheck away from losing their house, from not being able to pay for childcare in order to continue to go to work, paying for the essential needs that they have. So one of the legislation that we are offering is for there to be support for childcare costs for those that are working without pay.
And this shutdown is also threatening a massive workforce reduction at the Department of Education. As you know, senior leaders there sounded the alarm today, saying that there will soon be no one left to enforce the IDEA Act. Now, that's the law that ensures disabled students get special education services. I want to go ahead and listen into this, and then we'll get your reaction out of it.
The administration is essentially abdicating all of its responsibility related to making sure that children with disabilities receive a free, appropriate public education.
So, Congresswoman, when you hear that, your thoughts on this potential threat to America's most vulnerable students?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about what was already happening before the Trump administration decided to go ahead with the dismantling of the Department of Education and now getting funding for IDEA, is that there was already a donut hole of funding for IDEA to states. We know that there is a huge need across our communities here in America, and to have further devastation to programs that are essential to keeping our kids educated and keeping that brighter future shining for the United States is really scary.
So many families trying to figure out what comes next. And as for the ceasefire deal, while we have you here in Gaza, President Trump called it a historic dawn of a new Middle East. First of all, your thoughts on that, and what role or action do you hope to see the U.S. take next?
I mean, I was obviously optimistic when then the Biden administration got a ceasefire, got hostages out. As you know, there was over 100 hostages that were released with that deal. I was optimistic when Trump, a couple of months ago, did get a ceasefire deal. I'm still optimistic that this one will hold, but we have to see, what this entails. Not only do we want to see the hostages out, not only do we want the hostilities to stop, but we want a lasting peace for the people of Palestine and Israelis as well.
Yeah, lasting peace is what anyone can hope for. U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, thank you so much for joining us here on Prime.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have new developments tonight in the arson attack targeting the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Newly released video shows the moment that an accused arsonist, look at that right there, firebombed the governor's mansion before going inside. The governor and his family were in the home at the time. The defendant pleaded guilty in court today, and ABC's Aaron Katursky has this story.
For the first time tonight, we're seeing how frighteningly close an arsonist came to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family during a firebombing attack at his official residence earlier this year. Newly released surveillance video shows the stunning security breach around 2 a.m. while the governor's family and guests were sleeping upstairs after celebrating the first night of Passover. The arsonist, Cody Balmer, scales a fence and calmly walks onto the property, breaking a window with this sledgehammer, then throwing a flaming Molotov cocktail inside. The fire starts in an instant. Seconds later, Balmer is seen breaking another window and climbing inside. The 38-year-old mechanic kicks and hammers at 2 doors, including one that leads to where the governor's family and guests were sleeping. He could not break through and instead set fire to the dining room. The fire destroyed the room. After Balmer's seen leaving the residence, he called 911 and confessed.
I would like to apologize.
Today, Balmer came to court in shackles, pleading guilty to attempted murder, aggravated arson, and other charges.
I think we need real accountability for acts of political violence. And today is real accountability.
Shapiro says the attack left him shaken, feeling vulnerable, and guilt-ridden that his public service put his children at risk. Tonight, Gio, the arsonist Cody Balmer has been sentenced to up to 50 years in prison. Gio?
Just unbelievable video. Aaron Katursky, thank you so much. Now to powerful storms wreaking havoc across several states, bringing with it heavy rain, possible flooding and mudslides, triggering evacuation warnings. And our Trevor Ault reports now from California.
Tonight, treacherous driving conditions and fears of mudslides as a rare, powerful storm drenches Southern California. Slick roads causing multiple crashes. This tractor-trailer jackknifing at the I-5-118 freeway interchange in Los Angeles. In Orange County on the 91 freeway, rescuers cutting out one of the seats to free this driver after a crash left their vehicle flattened by an electrical pole and sent into a ditch. That driver was taken off in a stretcher. Parts of LA County that were ravaged by the Palisades and Eaton wildfires in January are now under evacuation warnings over fears the fragile hillsides could turn to mud. And overnight, a devastating microburst slamming Tempe, Arizona. The city posting this video of the howling straight-line winds. That system ripping the roofs off of businesses, knocking over tractor trailers, trees, and power lines. The Phoenix Zoo also sustaining heavy damage, though officials say no animals were hurt.
Geo, families from more than 100 properties were told to evacuate, and these evacuation warnings will continue into the morning as we're expecting more rain to move through Southern California overnight. Geo.
All right, a lot of weather there. Trevor Ault, thank you so much. And the president, Donald Trump, has posthumously awarded conservative activist Charlie Kirk the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The slain right-wing activist's widow was right there to receive the award on his behalf. President Trump honored Kirk by saying he's a true American hero. Kirk was shot and killed last month while speaking at Utah Valley University. Meanwhile, he was one of the pioneers of the neo-soul movement. D'Angelo, the singer, died following a private battle with pancreatic cancer. And tributes are now pouring in from fellow performers like Beyonce and even Jamie Foxx. Foxx calling D'Angelo's voice silky and flawless. Here's ABC's Rena Roy.
As a trailblazer in the world of R&B, legendary singer D'Angelo was dripping with swagger and soul.
I guess high off of love, don't know how to breathe.
His debut album, Brown Sugar, released in 1995, helping define the neo-soul movement with live instrumentation and influence borrowed from the 70s. But it was Voodoo, released in 2000, that propelled him to stardom. Lead single Untitled, How Does It Feel? The iconic music video, filmed in a single take, becoming infamous. Fans around the world swooning. His death comes less than a year after the death of his former partner, singer Angie Stone. Known for hits like Wish I Didn't Miss You, she died in a crash in March. The two shared a son who wrote in a statement, "I'm grateful for your thoughts and prayers during these difficult times, as it's been a very rough and sad year for me. I ask that you please continue to keep me in your thoughts, as it will not be easy. But one thing that both my parents taught me was to be strong, and I intend to do just that." D'Angelo also leaves behind 2 other children. ABC News has confirmed he was privately fighting pancreatic cancer. When asked by an Australian newspaper back in 2000 how he wanted to be remembered in the continuum of black music, he said, "When we talk about ancestors, the people we take our cues from, I want to be one of those cats. I want to touch my people in a special place." D'Angelo was 51 years old.
All right, and our thanks to Rena Roy for that. Coming up here, how do fewer migrant workers translate into higher grocery bills? Well, we're going to visit a farm in Idaho to find out. Then we'll tell you why some airports are refusing to run a video released by DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. And we're going to have more on the White House announcement today that the U.S. is bailing out Argentina's economy to the tune of $20 billion. How might this affect you, the U.S. taxpayer? All this and more when we come back here on Prime on ABC News Live. And welcome back to ABC News Live Prime. As our Rachel Scott reported at the top of the show here, the U.S. is moving forward in granting a controversial $20 billion lifeline to Argentina after President Trump today hosted the Argentinian president at the White House. And ABC News correspondent Matt Rivers joins us now for more on all of this. So, Matt, what more do we know about this deal?
Well, this is a pretty controversial undertaking by the Trump administration. Basically, what you're doing here is a currency swap. So it's the United States saying we're going to buy $20 billion worth of Argentinian pesos. So $20 billion U.S. for the equivalent of $20 billion in Argentinian pesos. The idea here from the administration is to prop up what has been a horrific Argentinian economy. Going back well over a decade now, you're talking about devaluation of currency, high debt, deflation. It's really made a very difficult time for the country of Argentina. And what you're getting from the Trump administration here is a lifeline. It's a bailout of sorts in the sense that this is going to stabilize a very volatile Argentinian peso. That's the stated goal here. But it's also to help prop up the Milei government. This guy, Javier Milei, is the very controversial president of Argentina. He's an ally of President Trump's, no question about it. And so it's two things kind of at the same time here, propping up a political ally, but also trying to prop up Argentina's economy by injecting U.S. dollars into their system.
I think a lot of people watching this are probably saying, like, wait a minute, this feels like it came out of nowhere. Yeah. And there are critics who are basically saying, hey, you're just playing politics here.
Well, not to mention that it comes at a time that the United States government is shut down, right? And the optics of this, sending money abroad versus, people hurting here at home, certainly something the administration's dealing with. But I think when you're looking at why this is happening now, it's important to look at the political calendar in Argentina. You've got midterm elections scheduled in that country for October 26th. The president's party is very much at risk of losing a political majority and therefore not being able to enact any of its agenda, an agenda that the Trump administration really, really likes. So there is no question the timing here is not coincidental. The Trump administration doing this with those elections in mind to prop up this government, to hopefully stabilize things down there so they can win the election. They've been pretty transparent about that. This isn't something that's, some backroom deal. This is Trump saying, I am helping a political ally of mine, and were he not a political ally, he said it at the White House today, I wouldn't be doing this. So it really is kind of transparent, and it's very indicative of Trump's zero-sum approach to foreign policy. You're with us, I'm going to do things for you. You're against us, I'm not.
You spent a lot of time covering Latin American for us here on ABC News. We appreciate your insight. Matt Rivers, thank you so much. And for more on all of this, let's bring in Eric Farnsworth. He's a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's also served the U.S. government at the White House, State Department, and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Mr. Farnsworth, it is great to have your experience here on Prime. Thank you for joining us. First, let's get right to it. How rare is it for the U.S. government to directly intervene in another country's currency market like this?
Hey, Gio, it's great to join you and your viewers. It's very rare, particularly for a country like Argentina, which has a record of default going back many years. In fact, previous U.S. governments have wanted to support Argentina from time to time, but they generally do it through vehicles like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, or the World Bank, such as institutions where they don't have such direct exposure and risk. So I think this is very rare in that context.
And the Treasury Department has actually not responded to ABC's request for details here about this agreement and the purchase of Argentine pesos. How unusual is it for the Treasury itself to stay sort of silent about these agreements?
Well, I mean, normally you would want to promote what you're doing and full transparency and to get public support in doing some of those things. I obviously can't speak for them, but the president did host President Milei today. They did talk about it, so they're not keeping it secret, but perhaps the details are yet to be worked out.
Is there a world in which this agreement ends up hurting U.S. taxpayers?
Yeah, sure, there could be. I mean, if you're swapping for Argentina's currency, the peso, and the peso devalues, then you're left holding the bag. But the bigger story here is that you don't want the Argentine economy to collapse because certainly you have a lot invested in it through a huge amount of international debt that Argentina holds, and that would be systemically difficult. But also there is a demonstration effect here to try to support President Milei in terms of his reform agenda that I think the Trump administration not only supports that agenda, but wants it to be a bit of a model for the rest of Latin America. So there's a much bigger story here, too, that goes beyond Argentina.
Well, on that point, could this be a wise move by the U.S. to, bolster our relationship with Argentina while even maybe freezing out China and Russia?
Well, absolutely. That's the gamble that the Trump administration is taking, and it is a gamble. And in fact, I think President Trump said that as much today. He said, well, their failure is possible. Much depends on the viability of the Milei agenda, whether he can get it through Congress, whether Congress remains favorable to his agenda, whether the Argentine people remain willing and patient to put up with the costs of the reform agenda, and there are costs. Having said that, if they come out successfully on the other side, the Argentine people, I think, will certainly have a better position, but the possibility that the United States voiced to tell Argentina to say, wait a minute, let's think twice before we get so close to China, I think that voice is going to resonate a lot more.
Eric, you heard me talking to our reporter Matt Rivers here earlier, and I was saying that this sort of feels like it came out of nowhere here. What do you think tonight is most important that the American audience watching this understand about this?
It didn't come out of nowhere, but for those who don't follow these issues, sure, yeah, this would be the first time, and the timing is complicated. As you mentioned, the government is shut down, and there are a lot of complications certainly around the world. But I think that what the American people need to understand is that Argentina is a friend. There are big issues here, and at least for the moment, there's no the risk of the U.S. taxpayer being on the hook for this is probably pretty limited, but that is something that remains to be seen.
All right, very important information there. Eric Farnsworth, thank you so much for joining us here on Prime.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And coming up here, the looming threat of a food crisis, how the Trump administration's mass deportations threaten the immigrant workforce that helps feed America, and the potential scientific breakthrough for patients in need of a bone marrow transplant, what scientists are growing in a lab that could one day make it possible to treat patients with their own cells. Stick around, you're watching Prime on ABC News Live. The U.S. Department of Labor itself is pointing to a potential food crisis stemming from President Trump's immigration raids, saying in part that the combination of low migrant influx and a more limited legal workforce threatens the stability of domestic food production. So what could this mean for your grocery bills and restaurant tabs? Well, Mireya Villarreal reports now from a family farm in Idaho, caught in the middle of this harvest season, hoping that they have a sufficient number of workers.
We all come on a H-2A visa program, so we come all here legally by the season, just for the season, and then we go back to Mexico. So basically, 90% of the workforce here, it's from Mexico. Well, we usually get like a lot of applications. We're not getting that many now because people is afraid like that even when they're legally here, they're getting like arrested for no reason.
So we're talking immigration. We're on the border, but not the southern border. We're actually on the border between Idaho and Oregon. Out here, it's completely rural, a couple of small towns, but you see these beautiful colors of green and browns, the blue skies. I mean, this is where our produce that ends up on our dinner table, this is where it's grown. And we're actually going to visit a farm today that is a family-owned farm. It has been around for decades, and they're kind of caught up in the middle of this intersection between immigration and agriculture.
So we've got, at peak, we'll have about 300 workers. We have about 82 H2A workers, and then it just depends on the timing.
Owyhee Produce has transformed into a big family business, passed down through 3 generations. And it's now in the hands of Shay Myers, who not only runs the operation, but has become an advocate for immigration reform because the fight has landed literally in their backyard. Caught in the middle of all of it are the workers.
Menos? Lo cargas.
Families he's known for decades.
These guys are able to come from Mexico. We have some from South Africa that are coming this year. They come from other countries. They're given the visa for 8 to 9 months, and they're allowed to stay the entirety of that time. They have to be pre-interviewed and qualified. And then when they come, we provide the airfare or the bus travel, their housing when they get here, and everything really when they're here except for food and clothing. That's part of the requirements that we have to.
That seems like a big cost, though, because, I mean, that's a lot to get a group of workers. Why not just hire people from here?
Yeah, so we would love to hire people from here. The reality is we can't find the numbers of people here. We're in a rural area, number one. Number two, this is hard work. It is difficult work. And there are lots of people that are not willing to do it.
There is a clear directive from the administration that they want mass deportation, right? They want to find people who are not supposed to be here in the country, and they want them out. That is impacting then our labor force. Is that what I'm understanding?
It's absolutely impacting the labor force, and the president said so himself. He said the aggressive raids are hurting our farmers. Nationwide, the USDA's Ag Labor Survey suggests that somewhere between 50 and 60% of our farm labor workforce is undocumented immigrants. And if that's the case, if we were to deport them all overnight, then that's 60% of the workforce, meaning that's 60% of the supply that's not being met without a shift in demand. And I think anybody that understands economics knows that that means higher prices for them at the grocery store.
Even the Labor Department points to a potential food crisis stemming from these immigration raids, saying in part that the combination of low migrant influx and no available legal workforce threatens the availability of domestic food production and prices for U.S. consumers.
With new storage technology, this farm can have onions year-round. I mean, take a look at how many are right behind me. But here's the deal. In order to get these onions to you, your family, your dinner table, they need more workers, which means they are absolutely relying on migrant work, just like industries like construction, manufacturing, and even hospitality.
This will be the size of a super. So the line is always taking pictures. We have 6 cameras.
Originally from Pueblo, Mexico, Ileana started in the fields as a seasonal worker almost 20 years ago, working her way up while providing for her family.
I knew from the beginning that I was in a country that offers you opportunities for whoever wants to take it. And then I started going to school, and then I was able to get my green card. And then I went back to school to get my GED diploma. I got it in probably 6 months, but it was like after here, going after work, I was like dirty with my pants dirty, and I was like, I'm sorry guys if I smell bad, like, but I need to learn.
That need to learn pushed Ileana into a local college to learn more about the technical side of the business with Shay's support.
I remember Shay giving me a bunch of books, like you have to read that, you have to study for that. So I started learning management.
Farms like this one are closely monitored and regulated by several federal agencies that have strict policies on who comes into the country to work and how long they can stay.
For Homeland Security, we have a search warrant for the whole site.
With the Trump administration's aggressive approach to immigration and mass deportation, raids happening in the fields, visa holders held up at the border, workers are hard to come by. Over the last few months, tariffs and raids have put farms and manufacturing plants on a target list, most fearful of being deported even if they're here legally with a visa. Ileana is studying to become a U.S. citizen and mentoring other workers to follow in her footsteps.
I think it's like leaving a legacy.
But the reality is not everyone is as lucky as Ileana. At least 3 bills have been filed by Republicans and Democrats acknowledging the growing problem of a limited domestic workforce and a reliance on migrant labor. But after more than a decade of advocating for change, Shay worries this may be another can that gets kicked down the road.
You are literally putting yourself out there for change, reform, all the things, but also because it seems like you have a relationship with the people who are working here with you. Why put yourself out there in this way?
Because it's wrong not to, right? I have a voice, I have reach, I have people that will listen. And because I'm a conservative and a Republican, like, people assume that I would have a different perspective here. And this is my reality. And I love these people. I love the culture. I love the effort that they make, and ethically to continue to not fix this problem is absolutely completely wrong. The ethics are wrong. Like, we as Americans try to do the right thing. Let's do the right thing.
So many trying to find solutions there. Mireya Villarreal, thank you for your report. And coming up here on Prime, was it anger or excitement that just led a popular gorilla at the San Diego Zoo to break the glass at his enclosure? And you know him from The White Lotus, Fargo, and Euphoria. Actor Lucas Gage is right here to share the very raw, chaotic tales that he describes in his new memoir. It's all coming up when we come back here on Prime. Was it anger or excitement that led a gorilla at the San Diego Zoo to break his glass enclosure? Drew Struzan designed some of the most iconic movie posters of our time, what he's being remembered for, and the amazing research producing lab-grown blood cells. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. Some airports across the country are refusing to play a video message from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, blaming Democrats for the ongoing government shutdown.
Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government, and because of this, many of our operations are impacted.
Airports in Vegas, Charlotte, Atlanta, Phoenix, Seattle, and others say that the video goes against their policies regarding political messaging in their airports. A DHS spokesperson said, in part, "It's unfortunate our workforce has been put in this position due to political gamesmanship." A gorilla at the San Diego Zoo sprinted towards the tempered viewing glass of his enclosure and cracked one of its 3 layers. Witnesses describing the moment as terrifying, saying they thought the impact was an earthquake. One animal behavior and bonding expert said that the reaction could have been in response to any number of external stimuli, adding it may not have been an aggressive reaction, but instead one of excitement or exploration. Alec Baldwin crashed his car into a tree while driving in East Hampton, Long Island. The front of his SUV was dented, but Baldwin was unhurt, authorities said. His brother, fellow actor Stephen Baldwin, was also in the car at the time and was not injured. Alec Baldwin took to Instagram after the incident and explained that he was cut off by a garbage truck, which caused him to hit the tree. Local police said no summons were issued. You may not know the name, Drew Struzan, but you've almost certainly seen his work. Struzan was known in Hollywood as the one-sheet wonder, and his art was used to create countless classic movie posters, including Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, The Thing, Goonies, and even Harry Potter. Struzan suffered from Alzheimer's and retired several years ago. He died at the age of 78. In its largest forfeiture action ever, the Department of Justice seized approximately $15 billion in Bitcoin from a Cambodian national, indicting him for wire fraud and money laundering. Officials say the alleged scammer ran a company that supposedly held people against their will in forced labor compounds and engaged in cryptocurrency investment schemes. The DOJ says that the defendant is still at large. Scientists at the University of Cambridge revealed a potential breakthrough in blood cell research, finding they were able to grow embryo-like structures that produced human blood cells, potentially allowing blood to be created in a lab that is fully compatible with a patient's own blood. The research is promising, but experts say any clinical uses are years away. Actor and producer Lucas Gage has never been afraid to take risks, pushing boundaries on HBO's The White Lotus and Euphoria, co-writing and starring in the film Down Low, as well as memorable recurring roles in Netflix's You and FX's Fargo. But now, at age 30, Gage has taken his biggest leap yet in his memoir. It's called I Wrote This for Attention, a great title, where he yanks back the curtain on a life lived under the headlines, opening up about his sexuality, his family, and finding himself along the way. His memoir, he says, is chaotic, it's honest, and yeah, it's perfectly Lucas. And Lucas is right here on Prime. Welcome.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Thanks,
this
man.
is what I think is so interesting is that we've all seen your roles, and you're always playing someone else, right? A make-believe character. But in this is all you, right?
It's all me.
This is all about your childhood. You're going deep.
Yeah.
You're getting out there. Why did you want to do this?
It's a great question. I ask myself that every day.
You're like, what have I done?
What have I done? What did I do in my life? I have always wanted to write a book, and this opportunity came during the strike when I couldn't do any screenwriting, I couldn't do any acting. So this premature memoir was born. So I just said, I'm never going to have a year to have this much free time. Might as well write that book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you say it's premature because you're 30, but you've gone through a lot. You talk about addiction here. You're talking about coming out to your mom, which I know it's a lot more traumatic than people think it is. You talk about a difficult relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
Was it helpful to go back, or was it maybe a little painful to go back?
I would say it's both. It was painful to relive those really traumatic events, especially with loss and dealing with death and some of the really heavy stuff in there. But I think it was helpful for me to reframe and take ownership of where were my shortcomings and where was I held responsible and my part in things. And so I think I have a better understanding of myself in the present now from looking back at my past.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about something called your borderline personality disorder?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
It's a borderline personality disorder is a cluster B personality disorder that is usually stemmed from trauma, or always stemmed from trauma. And, in this book, you'll find all these crazy things that happen in my life, all these chaotic, impulsive, intense relationships. And ultimately it led me to a facility where I got this diagnosis, and you can kind of contextualize all these things that happened to me, and it kind of all makes sense and everything clicks.
Okay, let's go down a few lists of some of the projects you've been on, right? Smile 2, Companion, you've got upcoming projects like People We Meet on Vacation. Is there something that you feel because I feel like for you, we've seen you in so many different projects. Is there something that you feel like you haven't done yet that you really, really, really want to do?
Oh my God, so much. I mean, I feel like even like with People We Meet on Vacation and this other Netflix rom-com, I feel like last year was a lot of horror and a lot of thriller, and then I'm like, I'm going to do a lot of rom-coms now. I'm going to do a lot of, I'm constantly...
Each year is like its own little genre?
Yeah, it's its own little genre, own little thing, and I think I just want to continue to do that, but also have more leading parts for not the stereotypical leading man that you see headlining a Netflix film. Like, I'm not the conventional choice. So I want to continue to push that forward, continue to have these quirky, out-of-the-box characters.
I wonder, with this book now out, what would you tell little Lucas?
I would say, I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad that you were a little bit crazy and impulsive and brash and audacious, because that led to where you are right now. And thank God you were that way. And don't be hard on yourself for it.
Well, you're proud of you. We're proud of you.
Thanks,
Lucas Gage, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And remember that Lucas Gage's very raw memoir, I wrote this for attention. But this is like the best.
The title's very good.
It's so good. It's
come on. We just beat people to the punch with it.
It is out today and available wherever you purchase your books. They are some of Hollywood's most recognizable stars. Channing Tatum, known for his charisma, humor, and signature dance moves, and Academy Award nominee Kirsten Dunst, who is the face of cult classic films, well, they're now teaming up with Academy Award nominee director Derek Cianfrance to bring a true crime dramedy to the big screen. Roofman tells the real-life story of a complicated dad-turned-convict. The trio sat down with our Linsey Davis.
The question really to the group, there's so much about him that is bad and criminal, and yet I found myself as a viewer rooting for him. How do you balance that delicate dance of, hey, this is a guy who does bad things, but yet we love him?
I think the thing for me was talking to the real people in his life. The two conversations I had that were most profound was when I talked to Lee and when I talked to Pastor Ron. And I expected both of them to maybe have some bitterness or betrayal or hurt feelings towards Jeff or be angry with him. But they both spoke about him like he was this unicorn that appeared in their lives. Lee said that it was the greatest adventure of her life and that she didn't regret a thing. And then as I was searching for my perspective on how I felt about Jeff, because I had the same thing that Channing, I liked him.
Yeah, it's a kind of a wild thing. I was trying not to assume too much, and because I didn't know who I was going to talk to on the other end of the phone. You just find yourself really liking this guy, and he's so just warm and optimistic. He takes care of you on the phone call somehow. Like he really is interested in your life. He loves movies. We talk so much about movies and having a family, and he's still's got hopes and dreams, and he gets out in 10 years. So I mean, he's been there a really long time.
Linsey, thank you so much for that great conversation. Watch the full 30-minute sit-down with Channing Tatum, Kirsten Dunst, and Derek Cianfrance right here on ABC News Live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Gio Benitez. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We'll see you next time.